jaw-dropping first episode of the animated series and comic book adaptation Invincible, we end on a stunning reveal where Omni-Man, the series analog for Superman, brutally slaughters the Guardians of the Globe, the series analog for the Justice League. While sections of this scene feel like a back-and-forth fight, parts of it also feel like an assassination, carefully plotted and planned to wipe out a group of people Omni-Man, or Nolan, once called friends. We get the impression that Nolan is not who he seems as the series progresses, until we finally come to know the truth, that his role as Omni-Man, protector of Earth and friend to the Guardians, was just that, a part he was playing. He was undercover, scoping out Earth as a site for future Viltrumite colonization and interbreeding. Nolan looks hesitant and wistful when he finds out that his son Mark got his Viltrumite powers after all, likely because he's realizing in that moment that his mission as an undercover operative was a success, and that Earth will soon be in Viltrum's sights. Over the course of the series, he kills or alienates everyone he has come to know on Earth, partly as an active strategy of distancing himself from their humanity in preparation for a war in which he believes he must occupy the opposite side. However, he still needs to win over Mark, and therefore needs to keep his cover for a little while longer. At the end of his fight with or slaughter of the Guardians, Omni-Man is in critical condition and is rushed to the hospital. Some have speculated that he allows himself to get injured or is playing up his injuries, but as a story beat, this felt to me like the result of the writers wanting Nolan's fight with the Guardians to feel as tense as possible. The brutality of the sequence affirms this, but every now and again we're given a few brief moments that might imply some of the Guardians will make it out. With each one that goes down, that hope gets farther and farther away until Omni-Man kills War Woman and then immediately downs the Immortal. After this, he passes out, and it seems real enough. When Cecil Stedman's special agency arrives on the scene to investigate and clean up, everyone is spooked by how all of the Earth's mightiest heroes could have been killed. They quickly realize that Omni-Man is clinging to his life, which makes him look like a victim. One character, however, isn't so sure. Damien Darkblood is the series analog for Hellboy, but he's also a detective trying to buy his way out of eternal damnation, sort of like John Constantine. It's an interesting mix of two popular characters. Fans were disappointed and surprised when early in the series Darkblood was banished back to Hell by Cecil and his agents. They were even more shocked and enthralled by the twist as to why. Our initial impression of Darkblood is that he's someone who sees connections where others don't, that he's suspicious of everyone and everything, and that includes Nolan. In this case, his instincts are correct, and he draws Nolan's ire by snooping around in Nolan's house, arousing the suspicion of his wife, who later goes on to look into the matter herself, and along with the superhero's costume tailor, she makes the same chilling discovery Darkblood did. In fact, Darkblood seems to reason his way into Nolan's guilt almost immediately. There's something natural about a demon being able to sniff out a guilty man that quickly, but it's his undoing. What I like about Darkblood's scenes in this show is that the show is fond of using misdirection with its characters and situations. Darkblood repeatedly reports his findings to Cecil, and this implies to the audience that when Cecil becomes angry at a lack of evidence or poor reasoning, he's rejecting Darkblood's idea. What we come to realize is that Cecil made the same cynical conclusion as Darkblood, and about as quickly. He may have known what finding Nolan unconscious among the dead Guardians meant the second he walked into the room, and someone told him Omni-Man was still breathing. By the time Darkblood gives him his theory, they're working off the same evidence and coming to the same conclusion. In one scene, Cecil specifically warns Darkblood not to mention his theories to anyone else. This almost works, with Nolan's wife Debbie being the only loose end. When Cecil banishes Darkblood, obviously Darkblood wants to know why. Cecil tells him, "You demons only see things in terms of black and white. Well, I need to keep things gray." It's a bit of dialogue that seemed unsubtle when I first heard it, but going back and watching the first season of Invincible in preparation for the second one, I noticed something interesting about the context of that scene. Darkblood constantly talks about Nolan as if Nolan is a man running or hiding from the law, from justice. A demon would likely think in terms of justice in a very harsh way, because, at least under some views, Damien Darkblood's very existence and the existence of eternal damnation implies a kind of cosmic justice in the universe. That cosmic justice guides him, and obtaining a sense of righteousness through it is his character's main goal, apparently. What Cecil is telling Darkblood in this scene, and this I think is the whole point, isn't just that Darkblood got too close to alerting Omni-Man as to the fact that they're onto what Nolan is doing. but also that Cecil himself was the wrong person to tell. Cecil sees the world in terms of grays. He isn't concerned with whether Nolan is a righteous man or not. He's concerned with Nolan's maneuvering and manipulations, because they're engaged in the early days of a battle against Viltrum's invading forces. In fact, by virtue of the fact that Nolan has laid low on Earth for so long and learned so much about them, Cecil likely thinks they're losing that battle, and he wants to win the war. Darkblood thought he could bring Nolan to justice, but Cecil doesn't care about justice. He cares about winning, about being in control, and about what might happen if the Viltrumites or anyone else was in control instead. In a sense, this first season posed Cecil as a flawed but also virtuous figure. He's willing to make sacrifices, to use unorthodox methods, to lie and cheat and backstab, but he's doing it because he thinks it's in the best interests of Earth and the human race. It's worth noting before we end here that there are two other key character parallels in these characters. Cecil Stedman contrasts with Damien Darkblood in some ways similarly to how Ozymandias contrasts with Rorschach in Alan Moore's series The Watchmen. I've always found characters like this compelling because it's a conflict that says a lot about the viewer in terms of how we interpret the contrast. I've seen some people over the years argue that Rorschach's dedication to the truth and his own sort of perverted version of absolute justice is more principled and therefore more admirable than Ozymandias' understandable but costly manipulation of the countries of the world with his doomsday devices. Similarly, I've seen a number of people express that they like Darkblood, but understand Cecil banished him, and like Cecil's somewhat underhanded ends justify the means way of doing things, because they show a real commitment to Earth and humanity. Both of these perspectives are valid, and I simply disagree. I think if I had to give my opinion, and I do stress this is only my interpretation, all of these characters are wrong. Damien Darkblood might be a demon, but as a man, a person with motives and intelligence and emotions, Cecil is right about him. Darkblood's thinking is too simplistic. He's overly concerned with the concept of justice that only suits heaven or hell. On Earth and in human society, Darkblood's way of seeing things isn't uncommon, but that doesn't make his single-mindedness any less flawed. Conversely, I find Cecil's actions unprincipled, guiding out of a sense of fear that is barely conveyed in his steady demeanor, implicit also in his name. Cecil needs things gray specifically because he knows that in a certain light what he's doing is wrong. Neither of these characters are really right, and neither come off to me as particularly superior to one another. In the end, only Mark's words, not Cecil's guns or Darkblood's justice, can reach Nolan. Earth's strongest man could only have been stopped by a heartfelt appeal from his son. Darkblood and Cecil are overly concerned with how they see the world. Maybe there's something to the fact that how Mark sees the world is what matters here. I suppose we'll find out. For now, that's it for me today, everybody. If you like what I do, remember to share and like and comment and subscribe for all sorts of future fun. This brief essay was produced for my patrons over at Patreon, where you can get exclusive or early content months in advance, read my other work, and see material left on the cutting room floor. However you choose to support this channel, I appreciate you, and until next time, I hope you stay safe.